Welcome to Live at 9 this Thursday evening, the 4th of February, with me, Doug Harris. Thank you for joining us. And I tell you what, we've got a great, stimulating hour for you, especially if you're into some of the things of world economy, or if you're just into the things of, hey, what can I do in this situation? Got just the guy that is going to help us right the way through with this. I've been sitting here fascinated with a conversation. Don McAvaney, thank you for coming. All the way from Colorado, isn't it?
It's a long way, isn't it?
It's a long way.
It's good to be with you, Doug.
Great to have you with us. You may have seen Don earlier on this afternoon with Richard Kent on Talk God. Don, he was just talking about one of his newer passions is they have a number of orphanages across the world and looking after some of these poorer kids, and that's part of what he's does. But what we're looking at tonight is the whole world economy. Don's been lecturing on this for a number of years now. He understands it, and he doesn't always toe the party line, but he certainly knows why he believes what he believes. So great to have you with us, Don. We're going to pack this hour, but let's start a little bit. Tell me a little bit about yourself, about becoming a Christian. That's where I like to begin anyway.
Well, I became a Christian in 1963. We said before the program that was the year you became a Christian.
Right, yeah.
So great things. That was a great year.
That was a good year.
As Frank Sinatra once sang in a song, that was a very good year. And so I became a Christian in 1963 after I got out of the University of Texas, worked in industrial for the Dow Chemical Company for 5 years, and then in 1968 went to Wall Street. So for the last 42 years, I've worked in the financial world, in almost every area of the financial world that you can imagine. Somewhere along the way, about 34 years ago, I decided I want to start writing about the things I saw. I was a bit disillusioned, very frankly, by a lot of the things I saw on Wall Street. And so I started writing about these in my own newsletter, the McAvaney Intelligence Advisor. And basically, I guess my claim to fame is I tell people everything they don't want to know. I give them the bad news that nobody else will give them. So I think that makes me very, very unpopular in most quarters. And if you ask me to leave now, I understand.
No, that's right. But what we did agree with is at least the last 10 minutes, after depressing everybody, we are going to give them some hope and light at the end of the tunnel, aren't we?
Is there any hope? Of course there is. Of course there's hope. First of all, there's Jesus, but there's other things we could talk about too. So there is.
Yeah. Give us a snapshot. I mean, you've been obviously looking at the world economy for all these years, understanding it, investigating it. Can you give us something of a sort of a snapshot of the world economy, of where we are and what's happening at this present time?
Doug, I think one way to understand the world economy is to look at the life of a drug addict. A drug addict starts off innocently enough, smoking grass, marijuana, whatever you call it in this part of the world. And then he goes to heavier stuff, and before you know it, he becomes addicted, and then he's taking more and more and more, and before you know it, he's hooked. And then and the doses have to keep getting bigger and bigger and bigger just to get the same buzz he had before. And so there's a principle of diminishing returns at work with the poor drug addict. This is what's happened in the Western economies. We adopted an economic model in the 1930s that was given to us by Lord John Maynard Keynes. I believe he was an Englishman.
Yeah, blame us. Come on.
He was a bit of a socialist, and basically the plan was, and it's now been adopted by every central bank and government in the world almost, is that no matter how bad things looked like they were going to get, you could print enough money, eliminate all business cycles, and you could just print your way or run up enough debt to stay in a prosperous situation forever. But, it became just like that drug. We began to take more and more of that drug, and so we've seen governments around the world, unfortunately led by our own, who have run the printing presses faster and faster, who have run up debt that is at the most unbelievable levels in all of world history, and it's become addictive. But just like with the drug addict can keep taking larger and larger doses. He has to in order to stay at the same level. There's this principle of diminishing returns at work, and so he has to keep taking larger and larger doses, and he gets less and less bang for his buck, if you will, or a pound. And so he has to take larger and larger doses, and before you know it, at some point he will OD, he will roll over, and he will die. And that's where the economies of the Western world are today. We have run up the most humongous debt pyramid in the history of the world. If you take total debts in the United States today, federal government debt, private debt, corporate debt, debt that's owed to all of our pensioners and so forth, we're looking at around $87 trillion in debt. It'll never be paid off. And the debt pyramid keeps getting bigger and bigger. And the more things begin to implode, the faster they keep running the printing presses. Now, unfortunately, we've set a bad example. And governments all over the world are now doing the same thing. So we have moved into a financial crisis which started in September of 2007, but which was incredibly predictable. All you had to do is say, this is what they're doing, and there will be these consequences. And so that's exactly what's happened. For years, we saw the Federal Reserve, our central bank, running its printing presses and running up debt and encouraging the American people and corporations and business to go into more and more and more and more debt because we can have perpetual prosperity. That's what your English friend John Maynard Keynes taught us. It's not true, by the way.
Well,
it
doesn't work. Look, I know every time you take a breath, I'm going to get in there, Don. But I love guests like you because I just have to ask questions and sit back and let you answer. But just to say, folks, let's open the text and the email right now. 07781 472647 is the text number, live@talkgod.com. If as we go through tonight, there are things that you want to, we'll be looking hopefully at some very practical issues as well as maybe looking at global biblical things as well. And if you want to talk about this whole world economy, what's happening, where it's going to lead us to, how it affects us as Christians, you've got some specific questions, do come through to us. We'll get as many in as we can as we're talking with Don tonight. So do come on through with that. I mean, basically, Don, I mean, the very picture that you were painting there, it becomes obvious that at some point you just can't go on any further. In other words, you're running up the debt, printing more money, running up the debt, printing more money. At what point is this just going to explode and implode and that be the end of it?
The drug addict system finally begins to fail. He begins to OD, and one day he rolls over and he dies. Our system, our financial system, is beginning to fail. We have run up so much debt in the last 20 to 30 years in the United States, but it's happening all over the world. It's happening in Europe. It's happening in the UK. And at some point, the system simply can't carry that much additional debt. Something will begin to be the last straw that breaks the camel's back. In this instance, it was the creation by Wall Street, which I've worked on Wall Street for 42 years, and I can say that it is run by pure, unadulterated greed. And so they saw a way to make hundreds of billions of dollars in profit by creating trillions of dollars of credit default derivatives, which they did over about a 10 or 15-year period. These are highly leveraged financial creations like the Frankenstein monster, where we take pieces from everywhere, put it together, and wow, we've got a new deal. Okay, and they created trillions of dollars of these derivatives. Now over 600 trillion. By the way, they've doubled in the last 12 months in spite of the financial crisis. And then they exported these financial derivatives, these credit default derivatives, to every financial institution in the world. Central banks and insurance companies and pension funds all over the world bought into these things. And so we saw this whole thing begin to melt down in September of 2007. And that was the beginning of the Second Great Depression. And let me say, very frankly, I believe that we are in a depression, at least in America, but I believe it is spreading globally.